The first story we have today, Rashida Tlaib. Minimum wage should be $20 an hour, not $15 an hour, because no matter where you stop, people deserve more money, right? I love talking about the minimum wage because it's one of these issues that is historically Democrat or left. There's a very clear dividing line between whether or not someone would be for or against. And I had a conversation the other night where I was asked if I was for or against it. And I said, well, there was a point maybe a few months ago I was more for it, but it's a really complicated issue. In some instances, it really does make sense, but a federal one-size-fits-all kind of doesn't, because as I explained the other day, increasing how much you get paid doesn't change the value of an hour. And that's what we are really trying to figure out. How much access to resources should you get for 1 hour of labor? The only real way to increase the value of an hour is the supply chain. And there's a lot of complicated issues involving the supply of labor, immigration particularly. So what we see from the Democrats as of now is this nonsensical statement about we need $15 an hour. Okay, well, they voted for it and they agreed. And now Rashida is saying we want $20 an hour. Well, why not 30? I mean, why stop at 15? Oh, wait, here's the New York Times. Here's why we need $33 an hour. And that's the point. There is no line where you should stop. Shouldn't everyone be a millionaire? Of course. But that doesn't work because resources are finite. And we're trying to figure out what the value of an hour should be. And that doesn't change if you increase how much you pay somebody. So I'll get into the nitty gritty. But the point I want to bring up before we read the story specifically is I don't think that you are not on the left for questioning the minimum wage, okay? People would say, I was told the other day that it's very libertarian of me to oppose it. And I said, but listen, if it made sense 20 or 30 years ago, doesn't mean it will make sense today. And Democrats, as of now, seem to be supporting it for the sake of supporting it. You need to consider how technology is impacting policy and then determine if you're acting in the best interest of a cooperative marketplace as opposed to a competitive marketplace. Do we want to increase the standard of living for individuals? Yes. Is a minimum wage the correct response? As of today, that's questionable. There are some benefits. I'd love to talk about those. That doesn't mean I'm proposing a free market solution. It means I'm saying with the current rate of technology, the current ease of transporting resources and the current free trade agreements, your proposal makes no sense because as soon as they say $15, then they come back with 20 because there's no limit. Look, everybody should be a billionaire, right? Of course. It's never going to happen. That's not the way things work. Let's read the news and talk about the minimum wage. But before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There's a PayPal option, a crypto option, a physical address. But of course, as most of you know by now, just share this video. And I mean that sincerely. YouTube deranks independent commentary, so we don't get the reach we used to. If you do like my content, then the best thing you can do, just, drop it on Facebook or Twitter or Minds or, whatever, or Gab or Parlay, whatever it is you use. Tell people, hear what Tim has to say if you think it's worth hearing. Let's read the news. Rashida Tlaib called for a minimum wage of $18 to $20 on Sunday, an increase over the $15 minimum wage bill passed by House lawmakers Thursday. Tlaib spoke at an event in Detroit supporting One Fair Wage, an organization that lobbies for restaurant workers to be paid the federal minimum wage for non-tipped workers, according to a local Fox affiliate. She criticized the federally mandated minimum wage for tipped employees, which is $2.13 per hour. Now hold on. I completely agree with that. We can't have a multi-tiered system where the restaurant industry people are paid less. Now, this is really complicated because I know a lot of servers that love the free market. They, but then things get complicated when you see these people saying, if you can't afford to tip, you can't afford to go out. And then it's like, tipping was supposed to be complimentary. It was supposed to be like, you did a good job, I'm going to give you a little bit extra. Now it's mandatory. Now it's like, you didn't tip, how dare you? So it's really interesting to me that we have this system in the United States where there is an industry, one of the biggest, where you can choose not to pay somebody. Why is that a thing? Okay, the way I see it is pay a flat rate, don't tip, right? If that's the argument you want to make about people working in these industries getting paid a minimum wage, well, then we shouldn't tip. It should be like if you want to. I tip everybody. I tip everybody really well because I like spreading. I try to. It's ending the cycle of hate, creating a cycle of positivity. So even if someone's not unhappy, I try to tip well so that their day brightens up and then they spread that brightness to other people. Because, man, there's this really cool video where there's a little tiny domino and they gradually get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then there's a massive one. And it's something like you need a domino 67% the size of the next domino to knock it over. So you can start with this tiny little pebble and eventually you can knock over a wall. And that's how I think about the exponential increase in power when you do something good for somebody and make them feel good. That extra $5 on that check where they're like, whoa, that's a big tip. Now they're happy and they can spread around so much positivity. That's what I'm all about. So I'm totally for tipping. The point I'm trying to make is there are servers right now that I know personally who argue against this, saying they make a ton of money, that they're making like 20 to 25 bucks an hour, and these kinds of laws actually threaten their livelihood. I know people who work like 3-4 hours in a night make 200, 300 bucks. I know people who make way more than that working high-end restaurants. So one of the issues here is I certainly agree that if we're going to have an industry, we have to guarantee a minimum wage. Well, that's my understanding is they do, right? So right now they pay $2.13 per hour. That's the federal minimum. My understanding though is that if you work as a server and you don't make those tips, then the restaurant has to cover up to minimum wage. But I think they only cover up to which would be like 10 bucks an hour. So anyway, the point I'm trying to make is I'm trying to criticize the fact that we do have a multi-tiered system and like one industry is exempt from this for some reason. But I also want to highlight, while I'm critical of that, I'm not a server. So I don't know if my opinion should be overriding those who actually work in the industry, especially if they like what they do and they're making good money doing it. So I defer to them. But if there's an organization that is saying this is our opinion on the matter, I respect your opinion. I have no problem hearing you out and saying the restaurant industry should get the same wage as everybody else. Right on. Okay. That's you. You know better than me. But the real issue here is, at what point do you stop, right? So the challenging thing is, someone asked me the other day, should we get rid of the minimum wage? And I'm like, I don't know about that, right? I certainly think we have an issue with it due to technology. But the bigger issue, in my opinion, is supply and demand. So when it comes to the minimum wage, the bigger issue is not how much money you get. It's literally the value of your hour. But let's read on, because I'll get into this in a second. I don't want to rant before we finish the news. Think about that for 1 minute. People cannot live on those kinds of wages. We can't allow people to be living off of tips and relying on tipped wages, Tlaib said. Tlaib added that the $15 minimum wage should be adjusted. She also called out America Rising, a Republican political action committee that was at the event. By the way, when we started it, it should have been $15. Now I think it should be $20. Make sure America Rising hears that. It should be $20 an hour, $18 to $20 an hour at this point, Tlaib said. America Rising tweeted footage of Tlaib's comment on Monday and noted that the lawmaker was calling for a $20 minimum wage. Why not 33? The New York Times wrote this story in January. Why not 33? The issue is, if you have 100 workers, here's the example I gave someone the other night. I'm like, check it out. I'm busy. I've got to run to the store to get the medicine for my kid. This is all hypothetical, but I don't have kids. I don't have time to mow my lawn, but the lawn has to be mowed, right? So I decide, you know what? I need to hire someone to mow my lawn. Now think about the supply of labor. 100 people line up saying, I want to mow your lawn. And I can go, ooh, man. All right, $10, who will do it? Then everybody starts yelling, I'll do it, I want to do it for $10. And I say, oh, wow, everybody wants it? $5. Then eventually half of them leave, and 3 or 4 out of the 100 say, I guess I'll do it for $5. And then I'm like, oh, I got 3 or 4. Okay, who's gonna take the lowest bid? I have all the control in that situation. Now think about this. Let's say there's no labor supply. I gotta go run to the store to get medicine for my kids. I got no time to mow the lawn. I go outside, nobody there. Nobody to do any work. And I'm like, there's nobody here. So what do? I look for the closest person I can. Knock on my neighbor's door. Hey man, I need somebody to mow my lawn. Can I pay you to do it? Now I've got a college-educated 6-figure salary guy being like, I'm not gonna mow your lawn. And I'm like, I can give you $10. And he laughs. $10? Never gonna happen. Ugh. But someone has to mow my lawn. And the guy says, fine, give me $100. And then you go, fine, because there's no one else, right? So this is a crude example of supply and demand, which I'm assuming most of you get. That's the point. So the issue we have is the value of that hour, even though it's just walking back and forth with a lawnmower, goes up exponentially when I have no choice. Now think about what happens when you have uncontrolled immigration and the low skill labor force is just flooded. Combine that with automation for low skill jobs, and you are going to see the value of an hour plummet. That will not change if you pay them more by federal mandate. So again, when I was younger, we had different technological circumstances, and there were still challenges in minimum wages. I certainly don't agree with the libertarian approach of getting rid of it and just letting people earn $1 an hour. Because that to me is like, you're going to have a lot of people forced to do that. And I got to say, I'm not an economist. Let's read a little bit more of the story and wrap it up. They say, Tlaib posted a photo from the event where she was serving food in addition to giving remarks. The House passed a federal minimum wage of $15 an hour Thursday in a 231 to 199 vote. Dan Crenshaw put out a really great video. I got to say, I got tremendous respect for this man, Dan Crenshaw. I think he's a good dude. I think we disagree on some issues, but we probably agree on a lot. And I think it's actually really funny because moderate liberals like, Obama voters probably agree a lot more with conservatives these days than wherever the left has gone. But he made a video talking about how a one-size-fits-all policy for minimum wage federally makes no sense. He's completely right. And there's another reason why I think it needs to be assessed, or I should stress, it does make sense in some places. Like if we were going to say serving staff should be guaranteed a minimum wage, that makes sense, hypothetically, again, I'm not a server, for that particular industry based on its industry criteria. But what about McDonald's and Burger King and places where they can just invest in a kiosk? And I know you may have heard me say this, but I'm going to say it again to anybody who hasn't heard it. If it costs you $20,000 a year to have somebody working the register, and it costs $40,000, probably more, to install a kiosk to automate their job, you're thinking about, okay, I can spend $40,000 right now, permitting, construction, buying the equipment, or I can spend $600 right now, but $600 every week, and even at the end of the year, I still haven't spent 40 grand. I'm going to keep the person on staff. So yes, it will expedite automation. I'm not saying it's an argument against a federal minimum wage. It's just an example of how industries vary. So when it comes to, say, picking fruits and vegetables, can we automate that? A lot of it we can. Actually, ignore the specific argument, the specific circumstance. There are many jobs that cannot be automated, that people aren't getting paid enough, and it makes sense to mandate by industry, by region, but you end up with this. They say 15, you say fine, they say 20. Okay, fine. Then they say 33, and you say fine, then they say 50. There was a funny tweet I saw where somebody said, everybody should make $1 million an hour because we should all be rich. I can't wait to pay $500,000 for a box of cornflakes. That's exactly right. Because the value of an hour doesn't matter. Like the value of that hour doesn't change. If somebody is going to, like how much do you want to spend per hour of labor? And the question is, it's actually a really interesting market question because the issue comes down to if an employer doesn't have to, he won't, right? They're going to try and cut costs. In the end, I think that's bad for everybody because they'll pay as little as possible to get as much labor as possible, which reduces the buying power of the low skill, the lower class, which means they're buying less cheeseburgers, which can go back into your business. The problem is if you have an influx, an endless supply of low skill labor, the business is going to offer competitive rates, which is what Bernie Sanders is doing. They don't care about what people deserve. They care about what the market will allow. So in the end, what can we do to increase the value of an hour? I honestly don't know because automation is decreasing the value of an hour. So it does make sense then to argue for some kind of base rate. How it's implemented is the bigger question. So let me just end by saying this. Obviously, it never ends. No matter where you go, the number will always increase. 33 an hour, great. The reason people can't live on minimum wage today is not because they don't have enough money. It's because there is labor that has to go into everything they do, period. Think about this. Somebody's a landlord, okay? They need someone to fix the plumbing, fix the toilets, fix the lights, make sure the smoke detectors are working. They got to pay for that. What's the value of that labor? Whatever the market dictates. It doesn't matter what the minimum is. It matters what the market dictates. The market then dictates this work is worth X. The landlord then says, I need a tenant to live here, but they have to pay me X plus Y, where Y is enough to create a safety net and make this living situation sustainable in the long run, to effectively pay the salaries of those who maintain the building as well as the person who owns it. I do believe there's criticism. Yeah, I'm a lefty, so the idea of a landlord owning 50 properties and sitting on them and making money just like siphoning away that value is questionable to me. But private property, I get it. I'm not a socialist, so as much as I can disagree with how that system works, it is what it is. Maybe there's reform in certain areas we can do for landlords, but it is complicated. What I want to stress is the landlord needs to pay X plus Y. It's actually X plus Y plus Z, where X is the cost of the labor, Y is the cost of additional administrative, miscellaneous, government taxes, and everything outside of the labor. Maintaining the building is X. And then Z is making it actually a sustainable business that can pay the salaries of the landlord, his staff, and effectively run the business properly. Just because someone's making profit doesn't mean they're sitting on a yacht somewhere in the middle of the ocean, though I do question exorbitant wealth from a lot of people who do very little for society. In the end, you have that individual who has to pay that rent, the Y cost, is higher than the cost of the maintenance guy. So if it comes down to minimum wage, let's say you pay $15 an hour to maintain that building. The person who lives there has to be able to pay more than the cost of the person who maintains the building. Granted, living there is, way more hours per week. It's like every hour of every day for every month versus 10 to 20 hours per month for the maintenance guy. But they have to be able to afford that. If you jack up the minimum wage, the maintenance guy becomes more expensive. Rent, which is X plus Y plus Z, becomes more expensive too. And the person who can't afford to live there, nothing changes. I guess I could say it a million times. It's probably pointless to rant about this because I did it yesterday. But I think you all get it. The solution isn't just saying give people money. It's mind-blowing to me that there is a real argument for why minimum wages make sense. And let me just address this for those that may have not seen my other videos. It has to do with external products, imports, etc. If the cost of picking an apple in California doesn't change, but the wage increase in New Jersey hits, then people can buy more California apples. So that makes sense. That's why the federal increase makes less sense. It's complicated. We have to look at it on an industry per industry and region per region basis. So, you know what, I guess I'll leave it there. But I want to stress, it's something we often see on the left that they don't dive deep enough to figure out what comes next. You offer people a rate. Okay, tell me what happens after you pay $15 an hour. Well, after inflation hits, then you just get Rashida Tlaib saying maybe we should do 20. And it's like, okay, but you realize the number is meaningless. It's the value it represents. I'm gonna leave it there. You get it. Stick around. Next video will be at 1 p.m. on this channel, and I will see you all then.